Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Mark Ingle. Everyone else is present. Are there any declarations of interest? All noted. The minutes on pages 4 to 7, can I take them as a correct record?
Agreed.
Are there any matters arising? Right. Item 5, there are no written questions from the public. Item 6, there are no written questions from councillors. Item 7, there are no petitions. Item 8, the note forward plan on pages 8 to 20 of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments? No, so noted. No decisions taken outside the normal process by the leader, deputy or portfolio holders. Item 9. Moving on to item 10, the local development plan approval of the Regulation 19 consultation starting on page 21.
I would like to move that report, Chair.
And I will second to make some further remarks.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present to the Cabinet the draft Strategic Development Management Policies of the Local Development Plan. This important document provides the statutory planning framework for the development of Harlow for the plan period up to 2033. Following agreement by the Cabinet, this draft will be subject to independent technical assessments necessary prior to publication under the Regulation 19 consultation, and the final local plan document will come before full council at a later date. However, I would like to stress that this document is more than just part of a necessary technical and quasi-judicial procedure. It sets out the ambitions of this administration for the future of our community. Through the hard work and dedication of many individuals, through cooperation with neighbouring authorities, through the support of an array of stakeholders, and not least standing on the shoulders of the pioneering builders of Harlow, we are finally able to look forward with confidence to the renaissance of our town. When Harlow New Town was imagined, designed and planned, the United Kingdom had a population of 50 million. Those fortunate enough came from an overcrowded, unhealthy, bombed out London to the relative paradise of Garden Town living. By 2033, the UK population will be over 70 million, an increase of 40%. Harlow was planned as a self-sustaining town of just over 80,000, which is clearly no longer adequate to either absorb the general increase nor to be sustainable. Sir Frederick Gibbard himself foresaw that Harlow would have to grow and change with modern life. This development plan does just that, providing for a larger town with housing growth to accommodate a population of over 130,000 designed on Garden Town principles. It will give us a modern town with high quality transportation systems and infrastructure. A modern town with high quality jobs in the right places. A modern town with training facilities to equip all our citizens and youth with the skills to achieve their potential. A modern town with the open spaces and leisure facilities for new lifestyles. This administration has the highest aspirations for our community, and this development plan gives us the route map to turn those aspirations into reality. I would appeal to all sections of the community to support this vision of the future and in common endeavour work hard to deliver it. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Johnson.
Mr. Chairman. As you can imagine, my team have a number of questions on this. We've tried to split them up amongst ourselves so you don't get too bored listening to one particular voice. I'll start with some of the top level questions. Could the portfolio holder please outline for us in some detail the timetable for this consultation and what the key dates are going forward, please?
Yes, Chair. Obviously, most of the key dates are in the forward plan. It's anticipated we will be subject to all the technical assessments. We will be going out to Regulation 19 consultation sometime in the spring, March or April, and hoping to complete the process before the summer and therefore to submit our local plan to the government and hopefully have the necessary public inspection process in the autumn.
Right. Could I follow that up with a supplementary on that particular question? Does the administration feel that a consultation during the PERDA period on such an important issue is appropriate?
I mean, the consultation will be consultation. There'll clearly be no commentary from the administration during that consultation. People will be able to submit their responses on the soundness of the plan and the policies within it. So I don't see any particular problem. If there is a problem, then it could potentially be delayed until shortly after the election. But I genuinely don't see why that should be an issue one way or the other.
Second question is, in previous versions that we've seen of this document and other local plan documents, we've had very large-scale maps of the strategic sites that have been involved. There is no such map included with this version of the document. Is there any particular reason why that is, and when would such a map be made available? Is it wise for the Cabinet to make a decision and to take this further without such a large-scale map being available?
Chair, I may say that. In the report, you'll notice that the policies map is being finished off and will be brought back to Cabinet 25th of January at the very next meeting. The strategic sites, there's no reason for the strategic sites to change. There is no change to the strategic sites that members have seen before.
So are we saying that this report is therefore unfinished when you're being asked to approve it?
The strategic policies and the amended development management policies are here for Cabinet to approve tonight, and then the full Monty of the plan will be brought on the 25th of January.
So absolutely, it will be done in two phases. And the view was that we wanted to put this out in the open, publish the minutes of this meeting at the earliest opportunity. So, you know, the things that are there will be have been looked at and will be approved or otherwise. But there will be, as has been said, the next Cabinet meeting, the final stage of that will be brought before Cabinet, and then the stage after that will be brought before full Council for further debate before it then goes for consultation. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to make sure that the detail is right, both before it gets to consultation and then obviously taking into account the consultation itself.
Could I just add, Chair, that as it makes clear in the report, the strategic the development management policies and the strategic policies have got to be subject to independent technical assessment. Now that is a process that takes around 4 to 5 weeks, and that's got to take place whether we publish the local plan today or whether we publish it in January. But because we've published these particular policies tonight, that process will take place before January the 25th. So when we get to January the 25th, everything will be complete. If we waited till then, we would have to do that afterwards. It's a separate, independent assessment.
My penultimate question, Mr. Chairman. Why have items appeared in this version of the document that have not been discussed at the local plan working group?
Can you say what particular items you were referring to?
I'll come to that later, but I would think as the portfolio holder you would know what has changed and what's been included.
I'll have a say on that.
Yeah.
I know every single word.
Good.
So why?
Can you explain which items, Councillor, you are questioning?
We will during our questioning, but I'm
Yeah,
asking you why you've included items that have not been discussed at the local plan working group.
Let's wait and see.
Democratic principle position on the question.
Next question.
So when we get to the point where you're going to divulge your rabbit out of the hat about which policies we'll be about, then we'll happily discuss it.
Okay, my final question, Mr. Chairman. Given that there are controversial items that have now appeared within this document, why is the administration still committed to a Regulation 19 consultation, which will only allow members of the public to be consulted on the process of the local plan rather than the details of the local plan, as I say, some of which may be considered quite controversial?
So the consultation will be representations on the soundness of the plan. It's not just on the process itself, it's on the soundness of the plan. And in terms of the key issues around strategic sites, those were addressed during the Regulation 18 consultation on the issues and options, and those haven't and won't change. So it is about the detail, and I'm waiting with bated breath for you to reveal which policies
And when a subject to the special council meeting.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, there have been changes, and I'm sure that will be elucidated during one of her questions.
Indeed, I'm happy to discuss the specific changes yet when we get to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's fair.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I draw everyone's attention to page 70 of the report, please? We were looking at the key diagram. There are a number of green wedge, green finger and green belt sections of the town highlighted out, in particular to the north and to the south and west. It says the protection of green wedge, green fingers and green belts. Can I seek assurance that we're saying we're definitely going to protect those areas of green wedge, finger and belt as per this diagram?
That is our policy, and the green wedges are shown on the plan.
Yeah, so they will be protected. from
That's our
development.
policy, to protect them.
Fair enough.
That's why we're having to have these strategic sites. Because the only alternative was to build on the green wedges, which we weren't prepared to do.
Okay. Can I then ask then on page 116? Well, it's not a trick question. I'm just trying to get to the
Yeah, that's all right.
I understand.
Tactics.
Would you like me to... Well, am I allowed to ask questions? Or am I allowed to ask questions?
We're awaiting you.
Thank you. Right, thank you. So on page 116, 10.19, it said the green wedges and green fingers are protected from inappropriate development. So I wanted to clarify then what we mean by inappropriate development if we aren't developing upon the sites that have been identified. That's where I was going with the question. It's not a trick question. It just seems don't seem to complement each other.
Well, obviously, the question of whether things are appropriate or inappropriate are dealt with in the development management policies.
I think you've completely missed the point of the question. Previously you said they won't be... Well, you said they won't be developed upon, and now we're saying that there may be some development. Which is it? That is a simple enough question.
Chair, I mean, the wording that's on page 116, the green wedges and green fingers are protected from inappropriate development, mirrors that from planning policy practice and planning policy guidance on green belt. It is about protecting the green wedges from inappropriate development, and it has been the consistent policy of this council, with whatever shade of political hue, to protect the green wedges. And inappropriate get-out clause, if something crops up and we quite like to have it on a green wedge, well, we'll get out of this clause. That's not the case at all.
Thank you then. Chair, I was wondering then what appropriate development is then.
Well, believe it or not, dog litter waste bins and waste bins and sort of municipal accoutrements like that is appropriate in green wedges.
Thank you for answering the question. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so then my next question relates to page 74. So as we've heard, this is a draft document. So the number of houses being built at these various proposed sites hasn't been filled in yet. I just wanted to confirm the timeline when we may have figures or no figures filled in on this particular part of the document. Because this page itself is determinant on Epping Forest, and Epping Forest obviously go next week with their Regulation 19 plan. I can tell the numbers, they'll be ready for the 25th of January and they'll be in there. Thank you very much. On the same thing, it goes on to read, policy HDT1 states that the design, develop and phase delivery of each garden community must accord with all the following principles. And principle 2 states that there will be timely development of on-site and off-site infrastructure requirements to address the impact of any new developments of these new communities. I wanted to know if there was any thinking about what infrastructure may be proposed in the future, particularly to the west of Harlow, if at all.
To the west of Harlow. Yeah, we had the details of the. Obviously, there is all sorts of infrastructure required for any housing development in terms of utilities, services, etc. Schools, doctors' surgeries, they are all classified as infrastructure. If you're referring to highway infrastructure,
I am indeed.
yeah, then obviously that was laid out when we had a presentation from the Essex County Council senior project officer at a all-councillor meeting in this room.
Chair, can I just add as well? This is a common policy that you will find reflected in the East Hearts District Plan and the Epping Forest Plan. It's crafted together through the duty to cooperate, so the consistency is there.
On page 79, I just wanted to clarify again about the development. On 5.33, it says the Harlow West development will be adjacent to the existing community. I hope the administration isn't predetermining the outcome of any future working when they say there will be development to the west of Harlow. Can I just seek reassurance on that?
Sorry, could you just make it clear exactly what you're asking? It seems a rather vague question.
No,
Exactly
I was seeking assurance that you're not predetermining the outcome of any consultation, because it says here the Harlow West development will be adjacent to existing Harlow community. So they're saying that there is going to be a development to the west of Harlow. I wondered whether that might be poor phrasing. There might be any potential development rather than there will be.
Well, obviously, in saying the Harlow West development, it is a general description of the fact that there are two strategic sites to the south and west of Harlow shown in Epping Forest's local plan, which is due to be considered by their council next week, I understand. And of course that is part of the overall plan for Harlow and the areas surrounding it. if you're asking me, am I predetermining any specific dwelling or set of dwellings adjacent to Harlow, obviously that will be considered in a planning application. Although there aren't any master plans relating to these developments so far, there have been, if you like, indicative policies being developed, which would suggest that there are going to be green spaces. Obviously, I can't give any assurances that there'll be green spaces in every specific stretch of the Harlow boundary, but generally there are going to be, just as there are in other parts of the development of garden towns, there are green spaces between developed areas. So when it says Harlow West development will be adjacent, it's a geographic thing, not a description of development.
It was simply because no numbers of houses have been determined yet. So there's potential, but it's not a definite, and the way it was reading as if it is a definite. From what you're telling me, it's not definite, so there potentially could be no development to the west of Harlow. Based on what you're telling me.
I'm ahead entirely what's in Epping Forest's local plan. And the reason why there's some uncertainty is the government has recently published a set of criteria about how objectively assessed need for housing numbers are arrived at. And in the case of Harlow, because we'd already made provision for affordable housing and economic growth, the changes to that formula effectively were still lower than the number we had in our local plan. In Epping Forest's case, it was significantly larger, nearly double, I think. So they have a bit of a local issue in terms of how they're going to accommodate housing growth in the Epping Forest district area. So, but when, as and when the Epping Forest local plan agrees the number they're going to go for, and the strategic sites in there, then that will be reflected in the appropriate sets of adjoining districts plans. It's as simple as that. That's the only reason there's no number. It's not that we're sort of trying to hide the number. It's just
I'm not quibbling there's no number at the moment. It's simply because we've heard a number of times you've been talking with Epping, and therefore you may know what we're doing, and when we're seeing the word will, kind of makes us feel like we're going that way.
Actually, I would just correct you, Councillor. I don't talk to Epping. We have meetings of duty to cooperate, and we have meetings of Garden Town Board. So we meet collectively, and if it would help the councillor, I'd be quite happy to change the wording from Harlow West will provide to Harlow West would provide. In other words, it would if it proceeds. But I mean, that is the plan at the moment of Epping.
I'll be very happy for you to change the word.
Thank you.
On page 128 is on. I've only got 3 more questions. On page 128, it's talking about enhancing key gateway locations. And it mentions that the southern terminus of the sustainable transport corridor, where it first enters Harlow from the development sites in Epping, been identified as a key gateway location. To my knowledge, it's not a key gateway location, so I just wondered why it was in the report.
Councillor Pennant, sorry, I've just actually come to the table. Could you just repeat that question? It's not a key gateway.
That's correct. To my knowledge, it's not a key gateway. Otherwise, it being highlighted as well.
Why would you suggest it's not a key gateway? It's part of the
Because it's not listed on page 128.
I think it was
further down.
Perhaps we could come back
Are
to
you
that.
referring
It would
to?
help if we had notice of some of these questions.
Are you referring to item? Are you referring to item 5 or item 2?
Five.
Five.
Southern terminus.
Yeah. Well, what it says in item 5 is obviously correct.
Okay.
tell us it's a tender transfer corridor.
Okay. And finally, on page 100, where we're developing a skill strategy. It mentions the different people that we're going to be consulting with when developing such a strategy. I'm just wondering why, since many academies are no longer under the auspices of a local education authority, why we're not consulting local academies, multi-academy trusts and independent education providers as part of this exercise. Or could we indeed do that?
So it doesn't say not.
Well, Councillor Perrin, that's a very good point. Obviously, we were perhaps focusing too narrowly on adult, or, post-16 education, but you're quite right. We should also look to pre-16 education as well. We're quite happy to include that in the report.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first question I have is on agenda page 64, local development page 25. There's a very helpful chart on this page, and I just want to focus on the infrastructure section, point 13, where it says, reduce the need to travel by vehicle by ensuring new development is sustainably located to accessible, sustainable modes of transport. Now, I seem to remember wording in previous versions of the draft local plan that it was cars. Correct me if I'm wrong, if it now appears to extend to vehicles. My question on point 13 is, of course we have many drivers in the town. Driving is the most important mode of transport. We have self-employed people that shuttle around the town, and it's those transport corridors that are very important to drivers, and White Van Man, who we're very proud to support. Will there be an impact analysis assessment of drivers be undertaken for new developments? I just want to get an indication of what this means. Does it mean that new developments will have large quarters of pedestrianisation? What do you mean by sustainable modes of transport? Will it be buses? And when you say you want to reduce the reliance on vehicles, will that also apply to bicycles? I just wanted some clarification on point 13.
Sustainable modes of transport are obviously public transport, walking and cycling. They are the modes included in our sustainable transport corridors. Obviously, any development would have to make provision for personal vehicles as per the development management policies that are contained in the document, which I'm sure you've read.
So to be clear, it's not about preventing, it's about reducing the need for by providing viable alternatives.
Yeah, my question was about, are you looking, and I'm just interested, are you looking at, in new developments in particular, pedestrianisation, trying to design out vehicles like cars from new housing estates? Because the language seems to be very explicit on that chart. But I'll make more...
So just to be clear, though, the language absolutely is explicit, and is not to talk about designing out use of vehicles. What it says explicitly is reducing the need to travel by vehicles by ensuring there are sustainable alternatives available. So it's about providing a sustainable alternative.
And the development management policies make it quite clear that parking for vehicles have to be provided.
The next question is on report agenda page 67, local development page 28. Now, it talks rightly on this page about the intention to have at least 30% affordable housing. If the Cabinet then jumps, and apologies for this, if you then jump to report page, agenda page 163, and that's a big jump, local development page 125 to 126, what interested me here about the local plan was the need under the New Housing Act to promote the supply of new starter homes. Obviously very important to all councillors that we have good, affordable starter homes. My question is on that particular point. given it says in the report that there is the need to have 13,600 affordable housing units over the period of the local plan, are we going to see specific numbers in future version of this local plan that set out the ambitions for the council on starter homes?
Presumably these are the starter homes that the government hasn't built a single one yet, despite announcing it 3 years ago. Certainly we'll try our best.
No, forgive me, Chair. Forgive me, Chairman. In your own report it says that you have a duty to promote starter homes. So I'm asking specifically with Harlow Council, are you going to put specific numbers on your ambition in the local plan period to have starter homes? Because it's an important matter for all councillors. It's not a loaded question. It's just, you know, it says in the Housing Act you've got to set an ambition. I'm just interested to see if you actually will put that in the January version of this local plan.
We'll certainly consider it. It's a helpful suggestion.
Yeah, okay. The next question I have is just to clear something up, and I think Graham will be able to help me with this question. It covers 2 pages in the local plan. It's report agenda page 70, local development page 31, which talks about, obviously, the spatial development strategy. And it talks about the east of Harlow development, which of course is of great interest to me as an old Harlow councillor. And when you look at that, what is interesting is I can't see, and I'm sure this will be clarified by Graham, that in the next version of the local plan report you will explicitly put for the east of Harlow development, which is your ambition, and of course I'm on the record as opposing it, how that will link in with the local infrastructure in Old Harlow. Will there be specific detailed comments on how that works as part of the technical appraisal that you're going to do leading up to January? Because I just can't make sense of how the east of Harlow development fits in with the wider estates in Old Harlow. Perhaps you could offer some clarity there, Graham.
Oh, there is a specific transport consultant actively working. In fact, I was at a meeting with them Friday week ago in Birmingham, where they're based, working on these proposals for transportation in the town. They've had advice from the Essex County Council via their modelling exercises, and obviously they will be producing specific proposals for transportation. However, I would say that at this stage there are no master plans for any of the strategic sites, and therefore they won't be showing any specific road layouts if that is what you're expecting. There are no master plans, and there will just be general descriptions of where, if you like, how these sites will access the main distributor roads and sustainable transport corridors.
I mean, I'm grateful for that answer, but of course, as you can imagine, the residents' chief concern would be looking at future versions of the local plan, how everything connects up on that corner of the town. So where the council can endeavour to actually bring some more clarity to that, that would help local residents understand what the council's intentions are. I mean, I don't agree with it, but you know, it would be helpful if we got the full intention of the council in the future consultation. So my next questions cover 2 specific sections that focus on the housing numbers, projected housing numbers that are specified for the east of Harlow. And again, I'm just slightly confused over the wording on this, so Graham, I'm sure you can wrap this up for me. On report page 74, local development page 35, it seems to say on that page that there will be a split between the 2,600 houses that are specified for the east of Harlow between Epping and Harlow, which I thought was the case. But then when you go to report agenda page 78 and local development page 39, 5.26, it says, and I quote, Harlow will provide for 2,600 dwellings, and in Epping Forest District it will provide XXX dwellings. Am I confused there, or are we now saying in the east of Harlow, in Harlowland, we're going to provide 2,600 dwellings and Epping will provide whatever it decides in its local plan?
Princess Alexandra Hospital, which would eat 15 hectares of the land in their jurisdiction.
Oh my, almost 3,000 homes, prospect for old Harlow residents at the back of Churchgate Street. I mean, that's a shocking revelation for my local residents. When we come to Princess Alexandra Hospital, and I'll have comments at the end after my questions, Chair, on this. When we come to Princess Alexandra Hospital, report page 80, local government page 41, moving in the spirit of the council motion that was debated, at present the wording says that it will only be the ambition of district and county councils working together. I just think, given the spirit of which we debated the issue at full council, we should have insert in there and our local MP, as is what was discussed and debated at full council. I think it's appropriate that the local member of parliament is there as a key stakeholder to fight for our brand new hospital. Don't you agree, Chair?
I wasn't aware that our local MP was a planning authority in any shape or regard. As at the council resolution, happy to engage, have been extensively in the past and will continue to do so in the future. It's a local plan, not a lobbying plan.
No, it's not. But I just think it's in the spirit of working together, and you say other stakeholders in that paragraph, that you just add in, like we did in full council, work with our local MP. I think it's an important point because you've put district councils and county councillors in there. I don't understand why we're not putting our local MP, because they're a key advocate.
So just to be clear, so the reason why we haven't listed every possible stakeholder, including both CCGs, PAH, NHS England, etc., is they are not planning authorities. This is a planning document, and the reason why district and county councils are mentioned is they have are planning authorities for the relevant areas. It's as simple as that.
And can I just add, Chair, that the councillor said that we were referring to district and county councillors. It doesn't. It says district and county councils. In other words, planning authorities. That is the point of that section.
Never mind. The spirit of working together at full council has evaporated. Moving on.
Sorry, I'm not going to let passing comments like that just go unnoted. It is clearly this is a planning document, and the planning authorities are listed here. It does not list a very long list of stakeholders. Yes, you're having a little smirk, Councillor Charles. Fine, if you want to carry on playing this game, do so. I'm interested in doing the best for Harlow, and I'm going to carry on doing so. If you've got any further questions, we'll carry on. At my discretion.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to agenda page 92, local development page 53. It says the developer must, provide a serviced site for gypsies and travellers to meet the district's needs up to 2033. That means that this council has taken a political decision to look at installing a new gypsy site in Old Harlow. When you look at the report and you look at the narrative on traveller and gypsy provision, it says that there is no unmet need. Given that we have the highest pitch provision in Essex, we have an injunction for illegal encampments in Harlow. Out of the 6 gypsy and traveller sites in Essex, we have 2. Why has this council taken a political decision to put a new gypsy site in the local planning period in Old Harlow?
So no, it hasn't.
This is another bit of fake news, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
This is much like the motorway through the town park. This is something that is required by planning policy for us to insert such a statement. Personally, I'd be quite happy to take it out. It means nothing, and in fact you forgot to quote, surprise, surprise, if required. And obviously it isn't required because, as you quite rightly pointed out, we've met our numbers anyway up to 2023. So in fact there is no need to provide a service site for gypsy and travellers to meet the district needs up to 2033 at this location. However, it's quite likely that because of planning policies, if we omit this, which I'm quite happy to do, it will be reinserted by the inspector, because it's a statement that is meaningless in reality, but it's something where we have to display our attention to the needs for the future that may change. In other words, the requirements for traveller sites may change in the future, and we have to, in our plan, identify a possible site where that might occur. I'm quite happy to take that out.
Good.
And I would draw Councillor Charles' attention to 7.45 and 7.46, in particular 7.46, which says, and I quote, as 9 pitches are required to meet the objective need, this means the local plan requirement has been met. And there are 3 additional pitches to be provisioned beyond the local plan period, and so there is no requirement.
Chair, the fact of the matter is I'm grateful that we have an undertaking. I think we should make a stand on this, and I think we should remove this, because actually Harlow has, I welcome this. I think that Harlow should remove this, because we have the best pitch provision in Essex. We have displayed that we have an adequate number of traveller pitch provision in Harlow. We're extending the pitch provisions in Fernhill. The fact of the matter is, in your report, it says what it says. The development must provide a serviced site for gypsies and travellers to meet the local plan needs. I think we should take a stand on this. And I welcome the portfolio's undertaking on that.
So all this talk about how we've got excellent provision, it explicitly says that in sections 7.45 and 7.46, so there is no further requirement than that has been planned for. So we are making a significant mountain out of a very small molehill.
It's not a molehill. Something like that would deeply concern residents, and I think it is important that something like that is removed from the local plan. So again, I welcome the portfolio's undertaking to remove that, and let's have an argument over that piece of local planning policy. So I welcome that. The next question I have is on report agenda page 180, local development page 142, and it's again something that we raised in full council about the nighttime economy. Now I just think in the green policy statement box, and I recognise you do talk about antisocial behaviour in the following paragraphs, but to make it more stronger that given recent issues within the nighttime economy in the town centre, it's very important that we continue to have action plans to deal with antisocial behaviour. So I just personally think that the local plan would be supported by putting something like that in there.
So is that not covered explicitly by the bit in the green box that says evening and nighttime use will be supported where they meet both the following requirements, including item B, mitigation through legal agreements or conditions to minimise negative impacts of on local areas? Is that not explicitly covered in that section?
Yes. I just merely say, given the spirit that we had and the conversation we had at full council, to specifically say about antisocial behaviour, it's a real priority for us all, given the issues that we've had in the town centre. But it's up to you.
So I agree it's absolutely priority, and that's why this administration took the action to employ additional 3 community safety officers, which I had the privilege of meeting for the first time last week, and will be deployed in Harlow very soon. But it is explicit about legal agreements and conditions to minimise the negative impacts of the development, which clearly includes antisocial behaviour. Any further questions? Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Despite the explanations we've had so far, I'm still a bit confused as to what it is you're looking to agree tonight. The recommendation is to approve the Harlow Local Development Plan draft pre-submission strategic and development management policies for purposes of consultation under Regulation 19, which seems to suggest you actually approved the plan. But the report goes on to say, almost at the end of the covering report, it should also be noted the final work on the assessment of smaller sites will be brought before Cabinet in January, and also the sustainability appraisal and so on and so forth. So what you appear to be doing tonight is merely approving the policies and not the actual plan. Is that correct?
No, that isn't correct at all. If you read the report, as you obviously have done, but reread the report, it gives the reason for making this decision, which I explained in my introduction. To enable the approved document and approved policies contained therein to undergo technical assessments as required by the European Union Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive and to comply with the Habitats Directive. In other words, we have to approve these plans, which is the local plan. There are, as has been made clear, there are certain aspects. The transportation consultant has not completed their work. They will have completed by January the 25th. But the main aspects of the strategic infrastructure are already noted. But the main reason for approving this tonight is that we can then have the technical assessment done, so that by the time we get to January the 25th, we're in a position to approve the whole plan for public consultation.
We're trying to find every opportunity for comment, questions and scrutiny, despite my patients being severely tried in the nature of these questions. And I'm sure Councillor Connor will be the first to object if we didn't do anything but bring this to the January and expect a sign up at that point. So we're providing an early opportunity, plus for the technical reasons that Danny has outlined, that once these are approved in principle, we go through the technical assessment of those, so that when we get to January, the Cabinet can then approve the submission of that plan to full council, for that then to be put forward for consultation.
Thank you. What you've both done is confirm what I was questioning. You're merely approving the policies at this stage, which could have been done in a much simpler way, and then get the full document with the plans and the studies in January. Anyway, so if the completed plan comes back in the 25th of January, why do you need to delegate authority to Managing Director and Leader to approve non-material amendments when the whole document is coming back to Cabinet for approval in January anyway? I don't understand that.
For the simple reason, Councillor, is because if there was a need to make any non-material changes to what you're presented with tonight, and it came back with those changes in January, you would ask us what authority do we have to make those changes when it was approved tonight.
And then those policies would then have to go through a technical assessment. So, we're approving the policies here. They go through the technical assessment, and there'll be non-material changes potentially during that process, and we'll get on that process so that by the time we get to January, we'll have a complete plan for approval or otherwise.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very difficult.
Page 44, section 1.23, housing allocations. The boundaries indicate the extent of the allocation area, but they do not necessarily reflect the extent of the land that will be developed. This will be subject to detailed assessment. So is that going to be part of the work that's coming back in January?
So can you just repeat the page numbers again?
Sorry, page 44,
Page 44.
paragraph 1.23, housing allocations.
Yeah, it's straightforward.
Chair, can I help with that?
You can. I'm at a loss to understand why a very explicit statement about what will be in the local plan, what will be reserved for an actual planning application or master planning. But carry on.
No, it's a clarification that although the site boundaries are shown, excuse me, it doesn't follow that all the site will be taken up by development.
Or anything.
And this was a concern that came out, for example, in the East Hart service stages of the plan when the Harlow North site, Gilston Park, was a huge site in the area. But in actual fact, the built environment will only be a small percentage of that because a lot of it will be green space. It's to make clear here that don't assume that just because this site is delineated that 90 to 100% of the site will be built.
So just to put it in a slightly different way, the local plan when it goes to consultation will not include detailed planning applications or master planning for any of the sites, as it says in here.
What I'm sort of getting at is if the could mean that the developers apply to build outside of it, but they wouldn't be aware that they were applying to build outside.
So I'll just read out a bit, obviously there's some difficulty in reading it. The boundaries indicate the extent of the allocation area. So can't build outside the allocation area. Within the allocation area, it goes on to say, do not necessarily affect the extent of the land to be developed, so there could be less that won't be developed, as Danny's already said, as was the case in Gilston, and will be subject to detailed assessment of as part of a planning application or master planning exercise, which clearly will not form part of the local plan. I am really struggling to understand what is unclear about this paragraph.
I think the problem that we're having is that this is 177-page document, arrived on our in-trays last Thursday, and it's all taken us a while to actually read through it and make sense of the whole thing together. That's the trouble we're having. If I could move on.
Christmas and the New Year to do that.
Well, no, we haven't, because it's not coming until the 25th of January. You may have over Christmas, but we won't.
See, to look at this document, which will form the basis, apart from minor consequential changes which we discussed in one of your previous questions. So we are bringing this at the earliest possible opportunity to give you ample opportunity. There's at least two more bites of this particular cherry. The first one being the next cabinet meeting, and the next one being the full council meeting, which includes all of Christmas and the New Year.
But, yeah, it's a major document. There's a lot of detail in it. It's going to affect the town over the next 15, 20 years. And obviously, we want to make sure that it's the best plan for Harlow.
Absolutely.
As I
That's
say,
why we've published it early to give you plenty of time, including all of Christmas and New Year, to go through the document in detail. So this will come back to Cabinet in January. Yes.
But if you're presenting the whole plan again in January, then we're going to have to read the whole document again to understand it in conjunction with the various plans and strategies and studies that's going on at the moment, including the map. Because at the moment, a lot of this doesn't make sense, because you can't actually point to things on the map as to what impact it's going to have, where it's going to be, and so forth. Anyway, that's what well, all right, I did want to come here tonight to debate that, but time is moving on. I want to move to page 45, section 1 to 8. In January, will we receive a copy of the Qualities Impact Assessment? It's a simple yes or no.
I'll have to go back to you guys on that.
I'm sorry, it's a simple yes or no. It's a Qualities Impact Assessment. It's a fundamental part of the overall process.
All these studies are being carried out as we speak, and I'll have to confirm definitely tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe they just
Yes.
Sorry, will you make a contribution?
So just to be clear, the answer to your question, Councillor Carter, is yes.
The question was, where is it?
So I thought the question was, will you see a copy of this?
No, the question was, where is it? Anyway,
So the question
good.
was,
I've got the answer I need.
Yes, I can't tell you offhand which copy it is right now.
Equally on page 76, paragraph 515 about the garden town, it says, and I quote, the councils have prepared a spatial vision and design charter framework. Are these documents published?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Page 76,
Yeah.
5.15,
Sign for your mind.
to facilitate the delivery of the garden town communities based on garden city principles, the councils have prepared a spatial vision and design charter framework. Have those documents been published?
Chair, if I could take that.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of future proofing in this document. It is in the process of completion with consultants appointed by the Garden Town Consortium through funds provided by that.
Okay, so will they be published?
They will.
Thank you. Moving on to page 91, section 7.3, we're looking at office developments. Okay. Change of use from office to residential by prior notification has produced additional housing in the district, although this source should not be considered as windfall, as the status may change. So, can one infer from that that Article 4 directives will be issued to prevent these unaccountable conversions as proposed for the enterprise zone? And if so, why not say so?
Yes.
The government is currently receiving, as you would expect, a lot of representation about the impact of the removal of the permitted development rights, this is the prior notification, and have announced that they will look into it. So there could be national policy change to change how this operates, and therefore we cannot count the numbers. So it's not exclusively about Article 4s. Certainly I don't want to steal Andrew's thunder, but in terms of the enterprise zone, we've taken legal advice on whether or not to issue an Article 4. I think the advice is that we don't need to do that because we are doing it anyway for London Road, and we're certainly looking into other areas as well.
I think the general point is that we can't rely on these as being permanent dwelling places because of the way they've come forward and the fact that they may actually change, that the owners may decide it's more profitable to do something else. So that's why we can't consider them as windfall sites, because they're not permanent, they're just transient.
It's very helpful, but it wasn't a question. But see, you also go, well, the report also goes on to page 98, section 8.10. Page 98, 8.10. Concluded that 10 to 24 hectares of floor space should be planned during the period 16 to 33. So, if we're going to need all this extra office space, how can we afford to lose the office space we have at the moment?
That's not okay.
Yes, we do need to retain office floor space. We are prevented from doing so explicitly by the permitted development rights exercised by private investment companies, and I'm afraid it's more around the market. And as Councillor Burton mentioned earlier, we're starting to see that office prices are rising, and the market will decide whether or not there are going to be offices or whether or not private investment seeks to continue with the conversion into residential.
Free market.
Next one is page 168 under the development management policies, 14.5 corporate priorities.
16.
Page 168, section 14.5 corporate priorities. Yeah.
No, we're not.
No?
You said page 168. 15.5.
It's 15.5.
Oh, it's 15.5.
Oh, 15.5.
I do beg your pardon. Yes, corporate priorities. In the earlier draft, it included the word, included the words encouraging entrepreneurship from the aims for driving prosperity. The question is, which has now disappeared. I'm just wondering how you can have prosperity without people to actually deliver it. The employment opportunities aren't going to build themselves without somebody actually behind the idea of pushing it.
So just to be clear, this is a reflection of the relevant corporate priorities. So I'm failing to understand what the question is, because the relevant corporate priority, which I is regeneration of the thriving economy. So what's the question?
In the development management policies that were shown to the local plan working party last year, the last time we saw any of this, it did include the word entrepreneurship. So I'm just wondering why it disappeared. And I did give notice of that question as well.
Could I just refer you to higher up the page, 15.1, where it talks about supporting start-up and small business units to promote entrepreneurship and economic regeneration across the district.
Well, that's only referring to start-ups and small business units. Okay. Just one last one, page 185. We're talking about the provision of and loss of recreational, sporting, cultural, and community facilities. L2, subparagraph B. Replacement uses and/or facilities of equivalent or better quantity and quality are provided. Oh no, sorry. Sorry, it's 1B. I have to get a new typist. The use and/or facility is easily accessible by all sectors of the community by both public and private transport. What that section should read is without the last 5, 6 words. So it should read, the use and/or facility is easily accessible by all sectors of the community, regardless of how they may have arrived there. How they get there is not relevant, but they must be accessible to the whole community. You have a duty under the Equality Act 2010.
Well, I'm not quite sure of the importance of this particular point, but as it is not that important, why did you take it out?
I'm sorry, Kev, but you don't see the importance of that comment.
I don't see the
But the
importance.
facilities should be available to all, to everybody, regardless of ability. Is that not important?
That's what
to
it
you?
says.
That's exactly what it says.
No, it doesn't.
Of the community.
No, it doesn't. It's qualified by both public and private transport. That's a qualification.
No, it's not.
It is.
So it's an addition. So look, we can get into semantics here. So it says, let's split this sentence up so you can easily understand it. The use and/or facilities easily accessible by all sectors of the community. So all sectors of the community. Right?
So
And all sectors of the community can access it by both public and private transport. So not just all sectors of communities if they have a car, or all sectors of communities that only get a bus, but all sectors of communities by both public and private transport. I'm sorry you failed to understand basic semantics, but this is absolutely clear.
They may walk. They may come by scooter, which isn't covered by your qualifications.
This is genuinely the level of debate we're having. And I know Councillor Johnson has been tweeting...
I'm sorry, Mr Chairman, this is to do with the local authority's responsibility under the Equalities Act 2010.
Yeah.
They have a special responsibility
covered
towards ensuring all facilities are available to everybody.
We take it very seriously, absolutely.
Clearly not.
No, but we're not quibbling about whether equality is important. We're quibbling about your, not just pedantry, but incorrect interpretation of the English language. And I know Councillor Johnson's been tweeting about I'm getting frustrated by the level of questioning, and you're absolutely right. I should simply remind people here that under the previous administration there will be no questions allowed at all. It's this administration that both changed the constitution and exercised a great deal of chair's discretion. And I'm more than happy to have questioning, which is why we've published this. But we've got to a level of posturing and political campaigning and pedantry that is beyond looking after the interests of Harlow. It's beyond trying to get the right results for Harlow and make sure it's equally accessible. We're just into, quite frankly, a load of nonsense. Yeah. So if you have any further questions, then please carry on.
Well, clearly not.
Well done.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a nice simple question. On page 162, there is the breakdown of the type of houses which make up the 9,200 homes. 70% of them are for sale and 30% I think we call them social housing, or terms might change, what I call them now.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing, yeah, they seem to change every other month, like most things these days. Anyway, the houses for sale work out to 6,440, and the social houses, affordable houses, 2,760. In the breakdown of those houses, the houses for sale, when you break them down into houses of 4 bedrooms, there are nothing more than 4 bedrooms, and there are 2.2%, which equates to 12. When you look at the social housing, it says 4 plus bedrooms, so that means there's going to be some that are more than 4 bedrooms, and that equates to 289. Why have you come to those figures? Could you explain that to me?
Councillor Carter, this is based on the, you'll see at the top at 14.3, the SMAR, the Strategic Housing Market Assessment, and it's carried out over the 4 authorities in the housing market area. That's Uttlesford, East Hearts, ourselves and Epic. This is work carried out by statisticians and consultants. It's not the council that's actually, we've been told this is what your requirement is. It's not a decision that the council's taken.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, again, just a couple of clarifications really. I'd like to add my weight to Charles's when he decided to take the Gypsies site out of the East of Harlow development as a local council.
There was no Gypsy site in the East of Harlow to take out, so let's be just careful about the language. Being so particular about this.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, it's in the plan, or is
No,
it?
it's
not.
It absolutely is not.
It is.
It's in black and white.
So do you want to read out the section again, just for the
No,
record?
I'm quite capable of reading. I have read it, but if the local residents read it, they can see it. So take it out, it's fine. I'm just really saying thank you.
He's
Okay.
going to take it out.
Yeah,
Can I make it
great.
clear, Chair?
No,
We are
no,
not
comments
taking
necessary.
out. We are not. I did
You
not
are,
agree.
because it's in there in black
I
and white.
did not agree to take out a
It's
gypsy
there in black
site.
and white.
I did not agree to take out a gypsy site. I agreed to remove a sentence that
Okay,
referred
yeah.
to future provision.
Okay, now you're talking about
Site
semantics.
hand.
Yeah, okay, we'll move on from there. So, on page 139 of the document, PL5, other open spaces, I can't quite understand the wording in the first sentence. Development on other open spaces will be supported unless one or more of the following criteria are met. It's just a question, wording. I'm not alone trying to understand that.
So first of all, we have to define other open spaces in the context of spaces that are referred to above, for example, green wedges and green fingers and the like. So it is not including those. So basically what it's saying is you can build on other open spaces, not including green wedges, green fingers and the like, unless one of these criteria is met. So for example, if the development would compromise the landscape character, openness, biodiversity or urban design principles of the town and all surrounding areas, then development will not be supported on that other open space.
Your house construction participation, I'm linking that with the next page, 14.14. So that's D, section D. Parking is provided at a level of 1 space per bedroom, plus 1 secured covered cycle space per bedroom, or set at the current adopted parking standards per house. Is that off-street parking? Because on the 14.14 it talks about the problems we have and the lack of off-street parking. So this doesn't clarify whether 1 space per bedroom can be on the street or off-street.
Clearly, the use of the words on street or off street are legal terminology that relates to public highways or private highways, in the sense of traffic regulation orders, which is when they're normally used on street and off street. The term, the way it's used here, it quite clearly would mean a private parking space, because if most of these streets in Harlow are adopted, and therefore it would not be possible for anybody to provide an on-street parking space because the road is adopted and controlled by Essex County Council. So quite clearly, in the context of Harlow, that would mean it would have to be a private off-street parking space. Obviously in other places it may mean something different, but in Harlow that's what it means.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Any other questions? We've got the easy bit out of the way. Any comments? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously tonight, what you've seen is a number of questions about the draft local development plan. And of course I realise that there are further developments of this draft local plan to come, and we'll get further detail in January of the technical aspects of this plan for Harlow. Where I will agree with the portfolio holder is that this is one of the biggest documents that is published and presented to people of Harlow. It is fundamental to the fabric of the town because it sets out the planning ambitions, the infrastructure requirements going forward up to 2033. So in line with things like the waste contracts, community services, it is one of the standout documents that's vital to get right, particularly for future generations. So there is a common agreement on that principle. My comments are obviously focused on my ward, and I've consistently said that I have a range of concerns about the volume of housing predicted for the east of Harlow. I've raised tonight questions about, when we come to the technical side of the local plan coming out in January, how all of that development, the ambitions for the council, is going to connect up to the wider infrastructure that is already there in Old Harlow. And I know that this is questions that have been raised to me by residents in my ward. They're very concerned about that. Obviously there is scope for 2,600 homes in that site, and we need to wait for the further detail over what Harlow predicts in terms of the actual number of houses they're going to build in that patch of land, and I wait with interest for those further developments in January. We've also had an argument about the inclusion of requirements and scope for travellers' site in Harlow. A decision has been made, whether it's a planning policy or a political decision, to put that wording in the east of Harlow submission. Now where I welcome today is the guarantee by the portfolio holder to tackle this issue, and I welcome that. I very much hope in the future version of this local plan that it is removed and we can move on from this topic, because as we all know, Harlow has historically and now has the best pitch provision in Essex for travellers and gypsies. There's no unmet need, and I don't think we needlessly have to have a debate about this, because this will concern residents. Residents have already emailed me about this matter because they've seen that wording. Residents have seen that wording already, and they have approached me about it. So if they're confused about the wording, something has to be done by this council to address that. Because if residents are genuinely concerned about the wording, this council needs to respond to that and deal with those genuine concerns. And that's what I'm asking for. Clearly, the town is going to dramatically change in the next 20 years. And where there is some agreement here is over the ambitions for a new Harlow hospital. There was cross-party consensus at full council, and that is to be welcomed, because we do need a health and social care campus in this town. What I hope is that we can work collaboratively with our local Member of Parliament, who's fought hard for the local hospital to be moved to a bigger site, to offer better wellbeing services for residents. And that seems to be the intent of the leader of this council. It's just a shame that we had to have a dialogue about specifics over the wording in that particular paragraph on the hospital. I just think it's just important to have a statement like that. because we all need to work together to get that success for Harlow. The portfolio holder ended his speech by saying that he had high aspirations for our town. The issues that we have with this current draft is that there are many unanswered questions over the infrastructure requirements that will go hand in hand with the plans by this Labour administration to put houses around the town in plots of land that don't really have the infrastructure at present. What we want to see is a clear master plan, technical master plan in January that spells that out, or we're going to keep coming back with questions, because this is a concern for the future generations of this town. We need to have sustainable developments, yes, but we've got to balance that with the needs and requirements not only of families in the town, but local businesses too.
Could I just make a comment, Chair?
Sorry, please. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Chair. Can I welcome the recommendations and the reports, and I think we need to place on record of significant thanks to the portfolio holder and the officers that have served us so well in this council for all the diligence and all the hard work that they have done to bring this report to us today. As the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Enterprise, clearly I welcome this report. I know that local businesses welcome this report, and I also know that potential businesses who want to invest in our town are looking forward to actually what this council is saying up to 2033 and beyond. Education is key to all this issue, and they are welcoming this report. And there are three priorities that I've picked out: regeneration, thriving economy, well-being and social inclusion, successful children and young people. And education is key to that prosperity, not only for their own aspirations, but for the aspirations of these towns. And I really welcome the comments that have been made and are included in this report tonight. We've also mentioned health, and they will be welcoming a clear steer and a clear understanding of what not only we're doing, but what our partners are doing in relation to the future growth of our wider community. Because this is not just going to be a Harlow model, it will be a West Essex model. I welcome the initiatives around the garden towns, the future of the town centre, vis-à-vis decisions that have been made the other night, the enterprise zone, which also is anticipating 100 new businesses, which will bring prosperity, new jobs and new opportunities for local people, and that includes Templefield. We also have the 7A, we have the Stansted growth, we have the Cambridge Stansted corridor, and of course we've got the good news around public health. But the key issues in this document, which we have to take seriously, is around the economic skills. Because the worst thing that we can do is not allow our local people to take the opportunities to take those jobs that they richly deserve, but we do not allow them to do that because they are not educated to enable that to do. There is a lot in here about prosperity which has to be welcomed. There is a lot about aspiration which has to be welcomed. Employment and education go hand in hand. And we have to use this as an opportunity to bring all our partners together to make sure that we've got the best for the next generation. Because that was Gibbard's principle. It was not about today, it was about the future, and we should endorse that. It's also welcomed about initiatives around retail, leisure, pleasure, transport and prosperity. Because what we want, and this document shows that absolutely clearly, is that we want people to live safely, we want them to work safely, and we want them to enjoy themselves in Harlow. So I endorse and I welcome this. I also welcome the comments around the nighttime economy, and absolutely, whilst we have to look at the naughty people who spoil it, we also know the vast majority of people in this town actually are part of that night economy. It's a business growth, it is about pleasure and leisure. And it's about us as community leaders taking the bold step through the portfolio holder and bringing this to the attention of the community so we get the right results for the next generation. So I will conclude by thanking personally the portfolio holder. I previously have been to several meetings, so I absolutely know the time, the energy and the space that they have had to make to create this document. It is a forward-thinking document. It is showing that Harlow is on the move. We should passionately get behind it. We should get out there and we should make it happen. And I thank the portfolio holder, Chair.
Had the opportunity to cooperate in quite a detailed and a deep way with our neighbouring authorities, even though we obviously are of a different political complexion, but it has been gratifying the way that we have worked together, especially the three of ourselves, East Herts and Epping, who are working on the Garden Town, the Garden Town initiative. And I'd just like to pay tribute to our colleagues on the other councils, and I hope that in the future we will cooperate even more in delivering what is in this local plan and in their local plans as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I too, like Tony, welcome the cross-party support surrounding a new hospital. It's very welcomed and it's nice to see reference to it paid in this report. I also welcome the cross-party support around education, and I thank the portfolio holder for taking on the suggestion about including multi-academy trusts, independent academies and independent schools in the consultation process, so thank you for that. Where the major frustrations for us lie is the continued lack of a master plan. Residents really want to see where major developments are going to be occurring, and that is where most of the angst is coming from. It's a technical document, we understand that, but people do want to know what the master plan is, and they want to be asked about where these housing sites are going, and that isn't coming forward. Councillor paid tribute to councillors from other authorities and working with them. But again, from as somebody who represents a ward to the west of Harlow, my residents, and we're not hearing that, we're not getting that from the administration, because despite the fact that much of that housing is not within Harlow's auspices, but is in within Forest auspices, we're not hearing from this administration whether they have a clear view as to whether that is really an appropriate place to put it, whether they say it's beyond their control or not. And that all goes back to moving away from the cross-party accord where there wouldn't be development to the south and west of Harlow. We seem to have moved away from that, and that's where, for the residents I represent, their real frustrations are coming from, and we're not hearing anything in the tone, the documents, any of the collaborations with other authorities that we're even making a case that it wouldn't be appropriate to put it there. And that's where the continual frustration lies for us. So I would urge the administration to consider those concerns deeply and to really think about the infrastructure and where housing is going, and can they please provide a master plan that people can be consulted on where the major housing is going, because we don't seem to be getting that. Thank you.
Chair, could I just make one last point? Because Councillor Perrins raised a number of points which are absolutely incorrect. We have actually got a long-standing written formal objection to Epping Forest District Council local plan, specifically because we do not have the correct details of the infrastructure. It's also based on the fact that they haven't made it clear how they're going to include affordable housing in their development. So I would just like to correct the record that we have actually, he said we've never made any objection. We have actually got an outstanding formal objection.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is an incredibly key document. I read an article online, I'm not going to embarrass the man in the room who wrote it, that said this is arguably one of the most important documents in Harlow in 70 years. I think it is, I really do. And I know there's been a lot of frustration from the administration tonight about the level and the detail and the questions that the opposition have asked. But I don't think an hour's worth of questioning on such an important document should be that difficult or that concerning to the administration. I think a credible opposition would not be doing its job if it was not asking detailed questions. And one of the reasons we're asking such detailed questions is, regardless of your views of my group and the members sitting here, there is an awful lot of experience and an awful lot of professionalism on this side of the benches. And if we're having trouble understanding some of these things, and we haven't had necessarily all of the support from the officers that you as an administration have in preparing this document, but if we're having troubles struggling to get to grips with some of these items, it would be very, very easy for members of Joe Public out on the street to be very concerned and to be very, very, very upset about some of the items within this document, particularly when, and I don't want to extend the discussion too much on the issue of the travellers' site, but particularly when that sort of item could have been dealt with quite easily at the local plan working group, which was the place where it could have been discussed, and yet it wasn't. And that was the point that I was moving on to. I'd like to just say, despite the fact that we've asked a great deal of questions and we don't have agreement over all aspects of the local plan, there is a lot in this local plan that as an opposition we support, and I think my colleagues have outlined that. This is not total opposition from each for the sake of opposition. There's a lot here about the future of Harlow that we agree with, and the ambition that I think all councillors around this room of all political parties share for Harlow over the coming years. It's an incredibly exciting time with PHE and with some of the other major developments with the enterprise zone, which I'm so pleased to have. This document is incredibly important, and all I ask is that as we go forward and as we you consult further, you make the consultation periods and processes as easy as possible for the general public to understand, as easy as possible for the general public to get involved with the consultation. And I know that you are frustrated about the political questioning that we ask. That's not just about political point scoring. That is really out of a genuine level of concern for getting the right thing for our town going forward. I just want to say thank you to the officers that have supported you in putting this together. I will pass on personally my thanks from Councillor Burton to my political colleagues in the other councils, because sometimes there is a view as well that, you know, a Labour administration working with Conservative administrations elsewhere, as well as the South and West Harlow would have no effect on Southern Way, something which a number of councillors around the room laughed at from all political sides. So I just think that there's still a long way to go in getting to the full detail that we really need to see to understand the comprehensiveness of this local plan. I hope we will see that in January when it comes forward, and I know that this will be debated again at Cabinet and again at full council. And please forgive me, I put on record now the fact that we will continue to ask detailed questions, and it may be annoying for the administration, but that is the role of a comprehensive opposition.
So it was just said that the gypsy and traveller sites were not debated in the local planning panel meetings. If I'd like to bring your attention to the meeting held on the 23rd of August 2017 when an assessment study was brought to that planning panel. So, thank you.
Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to come back to one particular point. Yes, I think Harlow's on the up. I think that with the high quality jobs, has been mentioned by Councillor Durfee and Councillor Burton, and also I believe the standard of education in the town is actually improving. So in the not too distant future, some of these high quality jobs should be obtained by our own young children as they grow through their schooling. And I think that's a wonderful thing to actually look forward and see that happening. My big concern is that, and we mentioned the housing, and I mentioned earlier on about the the type of housing that is going to be built in Harlow. I accept that these figures have come from an outside source or someone who's a body who've turned out and said that only 12 houses for sale, 4 bedrooms and above, and a lot more in social housing. Last Tuesday we had a Cabinet Overview Working Group meeting. Under Health and Wellbeing Strategy there was a foreword by Councillor Toll, the portfolio holder for Health and Wellbeing, and it was very well written. In it she acknowledged that household incomes of residents are around 10% lower than workplace wages, and that is also mentioned again on page 56 of the report under 220. We are going to continue to have this problem unless we build houses in the town where professional people can live. Some of the employers coming to the town are asking us, they want their employees to live in the town, and we're not providing those houses. If we don't provide the houses, we're going to have the same problem. In 2020, 2030, the big players in the town, the people who earn the big money will be living outside the town. Please can you take that into consideration when you look at these plans over? Thank you.
I think you can bring this to a conclusion. Look, I fully accept that the local plan both is one of the most significant both documents and statements of intent that this council has produced over a very long time. I also absolutely appreciate that it is complicated. And it's complicated because of the enmeshed interaction between the housing need, infrastructure, skills, and employment and jobs. And I've talked about my four-legged stool at great length in many different fora. So my frustration is not about a level of detailed questioning. It's about, quite frankly, what, at least on the surface, appears to be just willful misrepresentation of what the document says. So I'm going to come back to this travel thing. Let's be absolutely clear. Section 7.46 says, and I quote, at Fernhill Lane, an additional 12 pitches are being provided, as 9 pitches are required to meet the gypsy traveller need. This means the local plan requirement has been met. And indeed, there are 3 more than required over the plan period. And as a consequence, there is no need for a traveller pit provision in the local plan period in East Harlow or anywhere else for that matter. So I'm sure Councillor Child will claim the leaflet that he raised this and got the portfolio holder to remove the traveller site in Old Harlow. But that's just misrepresenting what the actual document says and what the reality of the situation is. I do want to just briefly mention the skills and training thing. Look, I mentioned my four-legged stool, infrastructure, housing and jobs. And while there's still a little way to go on infrastructure, I can see a path forward on all of those things. Clearly on the jobs with Public Health England, the enterprise zone and other developments, there's a strong and bright future there. On housing, once the local plans, not just of this council, but other councils, and in particular East Herts, and I would absolutely happy to endorse the very strong working relationship that East Herts and this council have, and I have a very strong personal relationship with the leader of East Herts, Councillor Linda Hazy. I do worry quite a bit about the skills agenda today. This covers a very broad range, covering central government funding for further education, about the provision of apprenticeships, not just at the entry level, but at the higher and degree level apprenticeships. It covers provision, both, we've had recent conversations, Brian and I, with Karen Spencer, obviously the Welcome Development at Stansted at Harlow College, the Advanced Manufacturing Centre at Harlow College make a valuable contribution, but there is far more to be done. I've had a conversation this morning with West Essex leaders, including Councillor Harlow, who's the leader of Uttlesford Council, on the need to get a common and possibly devolved skills funding in West Essex and East Hertfordshire, and that's something we'll be pursuing with some vigour. But having said all that, I really just want to end on, look, there is a way to go here, and I'm sure there will be detailed questions, but as long as they're a genuine attempt to gain understanding or to make corrections, which I'm sure there will need to be in the process, I will absolutely welcome those. And there will be, as has already been said, a number of opportunities before we get to the actual consultation, of which there was a several-week period for representations on the soundness under Regulation 19 of the plan. But we are, as has been said by a number of people, at an incredibly exciting and positive cusp for Harlow. We will see an enormous transformation of Harlow over the next 5, 10 and 15 years for the good. I'm absolutely convinced we will see much needed housing of all types and tenures, from genuinely social housing and affordable housing all the way through to what some people might describe as aspirational or executive housing. We will see a transformation of the skills agenda. We will see a transformation of jobs with Public Health England and others. And this is an incredibly exciting opportunity to be part of that. But I hope that everybody will not try and sort of, and I understand everyone taking a particular ward view and what have you, but look at the big picture, which is we need to get all of these complicated, interrelated bits of the jigsaw together to push forward, and then we will genuinely have a bright future. Right, so with the caveats that have been made already, that this is going to come back to Cabinet in January, following the technical evaluation and other detail. Also, there's one final point I want to make. The term master plan or master planning has been bandied around during this debate. And I think, I might be wrong, that people are using it in the generic sense of the words, i.e. a sort of a master plan. So they want to see where stuff's going. And this has some detail. There will be further maps in a subsequent iteration of where stuff is going. But if you're expecting a master plan with a capital M and a capital P in the planning sense of the word, the technical planning sense of the word, you're not going to get one. No local plan in the country will have one, and that's not going to happen. And it's not because we don't want it to happen, it's just, it is not appropriate. And some detail, which I'm sure members, whatever political persuasion around this table would like to see, will not be present until an actual master plan or an actual planning application is submitted before the London Council Planning Authority. And I'm afraid that is just the way life is. Right. So we're nearly halfway to the end. Good. So item 10.
Can you agree? Should we agree there?
So I'm about to read out item 10, which is the item we're discussing, the recommendations, but the clarity. So item 10, so the local plan approval of Regulation 19 consultation. So the caveats I've already made that it's going to be brought back to a Cabinet in January and before full council subsequently. Are we recommendations on page 21, A and B, are we agreed?
Great.
Item 11. The Treasury Management Strategy Statement mid-year review on page 199.
So moved, Chair.
And I will second.
Basically, we've got 42 million, and given the time, I'll take questions, obviously, if that is accepted. And 38 million of them being managed internally and for not. We've actually changed our investment policy to a degree, so now 50% of our investment is with other local authorities. Bearing in mind what was said at the last council meeting in answer to a question writing to the Pensions Authority, it would have been remiss of me as well not to have checked on the ethical investment that we hold. And at the moment, I've satisfied myself that, as far as I can ascertain, all of our investments at the moment are quite ethical in that sense. But obviously, there might be one or two things down the line that there might be some aspects of that, but we can investigate that, and we would change that if it was brought to our attention. I'm sure. Thank you.
Can I just offer my thanks to Simon Freeman after the comments that Councillor Downs made at the previous meeting. I also asked a series of questions of the officers about our investment policies and investments and things, and The officers worked very hard to get me a comprehensive set of answers, so I just wanted to put my thanks on record to him and his team for coming back to me so diligently.
Council had the opportunity for a sort of a training/briefing session for some of us. It was a refresher recently on treasury management strategy, which was helpful. And as always, it's a difficult balance to get that balance between sort of risk, return, and liquidity in these longer-term investments. And I've been monitoring this very closely over certainly my time in the council for several years, and the performance of the council's investments has been very good. So thank you, the officers, for that. So, any further questions or comments? So, the recommendation on page 199 to note the report and refer to full council for consideration. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, item 12, starting on page 210, which is the Q2 Joint Finance Performance Report. I'll move that.
Sorry,
I'll second, that's fine. Just some very brief remarks from me. Clearly, again, very strong and tight financial control, a relatively small underspend in the council budget, and a continuing improving performance on key performance indicators. I have remarked sort of internally that I remain sort of keeping an eye on the level of complaints in this council very closely, and there is a review being undertaken as we speak on a sort of root cause analysis, and I hope that the next iteration of the Joint Finance Report there'll be some more detail on both the results of that analysis and a corrective action plan. Given the time, I don't particularly want to make any further remarks. I have to take questions.
Just one, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy if an officer or a portfolio holder would like to write to me on the answer. On the financial performance budget variations and exceptions major items, there's a £68,000 adverse. £68,000 adverse on. Sorry?
Which page is this?
I can't tell you. 8, I believe, or 17.
Page 222, HDS that we're talking about.
Yes, and it's the HGS pension arrangements. I just want to know how that arose, given all the planning that we did, or the administration did over the HGS transfer.
If you don't mind, we will write you with it.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions or comments? So in that case, I'll just get back to the relevant bit. So the recommendation on page 210, recommendation A, basically acknowledging the outturn and the performance. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Moving on to item 13, the HRA Q2 Fires Report, starting on page 232.
Andrew.
Oh, apologies.
I've moved, Chair.
No, I formally second, Chair.
In that case, the recommendation on page 232, recommendations plural 232A and B, I'm noting the favourable variation and the forecast balance is also agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 14, starting on page 240, the capital programme supported finance report.
I moved that, Chair, but I'd just like to make very brief comments, please.
Of course, I'll take that.
Really, just the extract that I want to say is that we've had some highlights in regards to this. The ongoing improvements in the town park, including the disabled access toilets and pets corner. The installation of the improved CCTV at the Stowe. The initial works to develop the approved new build on the enterprise zone. And finally, at long last, the regeneration apprentice place, which is finally got there. Although there will be a carryover of some of this year's money into next year, but
That is as it is, Chair.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor
Thank you, Chair. On page 242 about heating system replacements, I was just wondering on point 9, it reads, following lessons learnt from these pilots, an extra £560,000 was included in the revised capital programme. I wondered if somebody could tell us what lessons were learnt from the initial pilot, please.
So I think that's Councillor Wilkins. I believe it's to do with pipe work.
Thank you. Yeah, the lessons learned, obviously, remembering this was the first part of the 3-year programme. Year 1, the first issue was to roll out 4 pilots. 3 out of 4 were extremely successfully completed. And one of the pilots, which was Tansdale, there was an issue with, we didn't touch on any of the 4 pilots, any of the underground heating pipes. On Tansdale, we hit with a problem that we needed to go back, and we solved the problem because this pilot programme caused an issue. We had to go back and work on those premises. Moving forward on lessons learned, we're now going to be fully checking the pipe work under the blocks involved before we commence any more work.
Is there one more? Following on from Councillor Charles' question at a previous Cabinet meeting, would the portfolio holder sort of continue to reassure us that no tenant will be without heating this winter owing to the replacement programme?
It's already contained within the report, Councillor Perrin, that we have delayed any work during the winter at that state's request.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Councillor Wilkinson?
I think it would be remiss, following the comments that Councillor Band has made when we opened this debate, but also the programme contains some finances regarding tower blocks and fire safety, which is paramount now in people's minds. We have obviously 2 public inquiries going on at the moment. We will have the results for, we believe, around Easter time, and there's been some very, I think, prudent assumptions made regarding fire safety, and money's been put to one side. I think it would be remiss of us. I know it's quite clear that our tower blocks are inherently safe, but I think moving forward, this is a very, very important move, I think, for this town. Thank you.
I'm clear, just have to note that both this council and the Local Association continues to make representations to government to fully fund any additional fire safety recommendations arising out of the public inquiries or the inquest into the Control Tower incident.
And just to say, from an opposition point of view, we thoroughly support that. We're proud that this council, as I've said before at other meetings, under whichever political colour, has always led the way on fire safety in tower blocks and was held up nationally as a good example. So anything that we can do to help lobby and perhaps influence our MP to help lobby for that in Parliament, please talk to me, let me know, and you have our support on this issue.
That contribution is very welcome. Thank you very much. No further comments or questions then. The recommendations for the capital programmes on page 240 A and B. So this is about noting the programme delivery date and the 2 new business cases around that bush refurbishment and the sensory play equipment and the learning centre. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Sweet. Thank you. Item 15, this is about the award of contract for domestic waste and recycling collection. There is a confidential paper. What I would like to do is go through this item. If we can agree it without discussing confidential paper, we shall do so. If not, I will carry on with the agenda. When we get to the confidential bit at the end, we can come back and ask any questions about the confidential bit. But I'm hopeful that we can get through this without having to do that anyway. But so item 15 on page 254, the award of the domestic waste and recycling contract.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is a very important milestone in the provision of services for public in Harlow. The current contract for waste collection runs out or it ends in June, two-stage tendering process to select a contractor for next June onwards. And I have to confess that I have not been as involved in this process as I have been in the local plan process. So I would like to pay tribute to the officers who've carried this through very diligently and efficiently. I'd just like to pick out a few headlines. First of all, the contract that's being recommended, the tender that's being recommended, will provide the core services as the current contract, same frequency, same containers. Will retain the same provision for nappies and incontinence waste as we have now. There will be significant improvement in the use of new technology, such that there will be quite extensive information coming back from the street, both in terms of location and photos of whatever is significant to photo in terms of the street activities. So that's going to be a vast improvement, and customers, our residents, will be able to phone up and get much more real-time information about what has happened or not happened. We propose to step up our green waste collection, which has always been something that has been slightly different in Harlow to the other districts in Essex because of the nature of the town and historical reasons. But we're hoping to see a significant increase in the service for green waste collection, and that it is easier to use and in fact costs significantly less than the rather ad hoc arrangements that we have at the moment. We're proposing to cease the collection of separate collection of food waste from flats, blocks of flats, for a number of reasons. First of all, there was only ever modest quantities of food waste collected anyway compared to what there should have been. The government subsidy was available for this almost experiment, you could call it, has ceased, and the plant down at Basildon that treats the waste can actually handle a certain amount of food waste in the general waste without generating methane. So in other words, it's acceptable for food to be mixed in with the general residual waste. The local staff are fully protected under TUPE, and last but not least, the contract offers a significant lower cost, so it's a win-win all round. So I'd recommend that we accept the tender from bidder A. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Councillor Giles.
Can I start by recognising the level of work that goes into a procurement round for the waste and recycling contract, having been in post and going through the process of the previous procurement round for the waste and recycling contract. I recognise the hard work that goes into this by officers in particular. My question is just on the bulky waste. There is a proposed increase of 50%. When we were in administration, we were given specific advice from officers, and I remember the specific meeting where they said, look, there needs to be a balance when you're increasing charges on bulky waste, because the concern always is if you increase the cost of bulky waste, there is the potential correlation for an increase in fly tipping. What advice did the administration get from officers about increases to the bulky waste collection charge? And has any impact assessments been done to look at the potential issues around fly tipping as a result of the increase in the bulky waste charge?
The proposals made here come from a study of both comparator local authorities and other local authorities in Essex, and the proposed charge will put the council at a midpoint, and the experience of other local authorities in Essex who we regularly liaise with
levels, and will this result in increased fly tipping?
Well, the experience of other local authorities in Essex is that changes of this type and adopting this type of charge haven't resulted in measurable amounts of increased fly tipping. Similarly, changes to policy at the household waste recycling centre don't affect the collected statistics. So we're not anticipating a measurable upturn in the number of fly tippings reported.
Sorry, I don't want to be too much of a pedant, Mr. Chairman. What does measurable mean? Is it there'll be one or two extra mattresses, or on the streets and cabinets, or I'm trying to get to the bottom of will there actually be an increase in fly tipping or not as a result of this?
Not that you can tell, but it will be my interpretation, but
exactly, yes. I mean, I'm not going to commit myself absolutely because it comes in the future, but when this kind of change has been made in the past, I've looked at the pattern and there hasn't been any statistically significant increase after.
Okay, right. Are there any other questions or comments on this? No? Right, so the recommendations A to E on page 254. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 16, lift refurbishment programme.
I formally move this item, Chair.
I'll second it first. Seconding it. This is very controversial. Any questions or comments? In that case, recommendation on page 265. Recommendation A that the tender by contract B is accepted. Are we agreed?
Great.
Thank you. Item 17, contract award for the refurbishment works to temporary accommodation.
I again move this item, Chair.
I'll second. Any questions or comments? The recommendation on page 268, recommendation A, that contractor A is accepted for this contract. Are we so agreed? Agreed. Right, item 80, debt write-offs, starting on page 272.
So moved, Chair.
And I will second that. Are there any questions? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can the portfolio holder confirm who organisation B are?
Organisation with the advice centre.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Hang on a minute, Mike.
Sorry, you're not allowed to know. I just asked the advice and was told I was okay.
Okay.
Organisation A you are.
Organisation B I'm not. Right, okay. All I can say about Organisation B is that they paid some of the money back. They paid about half of the money, over half of the money back, but they stopped paying at about 2002-ish, was it? About 2002, and then they just didn't, they haven't been back. And it's a confused legal situation to actually get the money back.
In light of that, obviously Organisation A has caused a lot of public interest and press attention.
Absolutely.
It's an area of deep concern. Question I have for you, for the portfolio holders. Obviously, we're all aware of the previous report on the Harlow Welfare Rights and Advice Centre, the range of options that were offered up to the council as an action plan to take forward. One of those proposals was to write off the debt at the time, which was about 26,000, and now it's gone up to 127. The specific legal advice at that time in that report, and I quote, was that when you took into consideration the options of increasing annual core funding from the council to Harlow Welfare Rights and Advice, writing off the debt, or the council granting a year's extension of its contract, there are issues around European Union procurement rules and state aid help that were explored in that report. And a number of concerns were raised, and in the conclusion, within the legal advice that was offered to councillors, it said, the legal advice is clear. The council cannot meet these conditions. The only recommendation that can be made to Cabinet is consequently that legal advice above and in the Scrutiny Committee's conclusions for Harlow Welfare Rights and Advice Centre is that it is not financially viable, and that is accepted. And of course that's what sadly happened. Given that legal advice that took into consideration those options and the debt write-off, that legal advice was very clear that actually it could be seen, the debt write-off, as supporting the organisation when it had already hit the level of procurement costs that meant that it couldn't have any more money and it would have to go out to procurement that service. Can you just inform me updated legal advice that means that we can actually write off that debt?
Well, I agree with you in principle. I cannot defend that decision that was taken at the time because, looking back on it, it was actually wrong advice. We, in my opinion, but something was enforced.
To answer your question directly, Councillor Charles, so my understanding is that that organisation does no longer exist.
No.
And hence, it's not a question of giving aid to that organisation, it is a defunct organisation, and hence the debt has to be written off. So it's not about giving state aid or any other aid to that organisation, it just does not exist as an organisation to take legal action against.
It is
the right
ironic
question.
that we arrived at this situation. Very ironic.
Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned. I understand the situation we're in. It's a very sad situation, but I'm also very concerned that the portfolio holder is now telling us that the council received incorrect legal advice at the time from the then legal officer of the council. Can we have a further statement on that, please?
Can I be clear, Chair? Not from the legal advice, but from the former chief executive. In my opinion, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And at the end of the day,
I think we're
it's ironic that we are
Councillor
finding
Danforth,
ourselves in
please.
this situation.
Can I just stop you there? We are in extremely dangerous territory here, of which I have in the past taken personal legal advice on. But let me just say that the legal advice that we got was robustly challenged, and there was no option, as indicated in the report, but to accept that advice.
So the advice in the report in 2012 that you received
at that time.
At that time. So what was the updated legal advice now today on that? That's all I want to know. I appreciate what you've said just a moment ago, but just what was the legal grounds for submitting the report on the debt write-off today?
Well, so it's simply that the organisation does not exist. So there is not an organisation to pursue it in order to reclaim the debt. I can't really add much more than that. That's not a sort of, it's just a statement of fact. It's not a sort of detailed legal opinion. It's just. Any further questions or comments on this item? So, so the recommendation on page 272, recommendation A, are we agreed? Agreed. Yeah, no dissent. Right, moving on to item 19A. So just to be clear, this basically the recommendation is to refer this to full council and not to approve the scheme. So on that basis, are we content to vote for council for a decision? In that case, we are agreed on that basis. So I just want to make sure that the minutes reflect that that's the decision that council was specifically written here. Right, so there are the minutes of various meetings. Let's get back to my summary, it might be easier. So to note the meetings of the Highways Panel, the Shareholder Subcommittee and the Cabinet Overview Working Group. So no any questions? Right. There'll be no matters of urgent business. I move that the following items be taken in private session on the grounds that they are likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as specified under paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, if and so doing, as in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing information, and on the basis that paragraph 3 contains information related to financial or business affairs of a particular person, including the authority holding that information, and I'm afraid I must ask the